when that water gets warm and those fish get around cover, there's nothing better than a shallow water frog bite. It's so painful when you cast at these juicy looking spots and just nobody's home. Oh, there's one. Oh, that's a good one too. Nice. Well, somebody was home. Nice little 2.5, 3-pounder. Choke that thing. It's a good way to start the morning. Thank you. Yo, it's your boy, back at it like a bass addict, back in the garage for part 4 of my top 5 spring bait series. If you haven't checked out the past 3 videos, definitely go do that. Dropped a lot of good tips on some great baits for this time of year, and they definitely will help you catch them, so check those videos out. And today we're going to talk about frogs. One of my favorite ways to catch them, probably a lot of y'all's favorite ways to catch them. It's just one of the funnest techniques out there in bass fishing. Having those fish come up top water and just explode on your bait is so much fun. Obviously heavy line, heavy rod, heavy cover also just makes it that much more addicting. And this time of year is when that bite starts to pick up. So the water temps are warming, those fish are pushing shallow. They're either pre-spawn, they're actively spawning, or they're post-spawn, and all 3 phases of fish will eat a frog. So it's a great time to pick that bait up and chase a big one. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. So yeah, the benefit of throwing a frog this time of year is you're not really wondering where the fish are. We know they're coming shallow. A lot of them already are shallow. They're tucked around cover in those spawning areas, and so you can kind of pick those pieces of cover apart with a frog and trigger some of those bigger fish into eating. So areas that I like to look for, it's really simple. I'm looking shallow, I'm looking at heavy cover, isolated cover, and I'm just making real accurate target casts. So tule points, obviously the ideal thing for frogs is like mats. So if you have isolated mats of grass or cheese, that can be good stuff. Even like lay down trees is a great place to throw a frog. Anywhere where there's shade, those bass will tuck up in there and they'll definitely come up and eat a frog. Around docks, if you got shallow docks, up toward the base of those docks, it's a great place to skip a frog. Anywhere you can get it, anywhere that a bass might hide, throw it, because those big girls, they like to hide in the deepest, darkest places, and they'll come up and smoke a frog, and it's too much fun. But that's kind of the areas that I'm looking for, and like I said, just making real accurate target casts. Sometimes I'm just pitching and flipping it real tight quarters into those tight spaces where those bass are sitting. So real simple. You're not looking offshore at anything. It's all shallow, it's all visible targets, and you're just making casts, making your way down the bank at the most juicy looking obvious stuff, and eventually you'll come up on some good ones. The baits that I like, I'm really just going to talk about 3, keep it real simple. I'll link other ones that I like in the description as always, so check that out for some more bait recommendations. But these are the 3 that I'm going to pick up more often than not. I really like a popping frog a lot of times of the year, but especially this time of year. Kind of the benefit of a popping frog is you have this cup mouth. Obviously it pops, but it also it creates this resistance, and so it keeps the frog in place. You can walk it and it really won't move very far. And for those fish that are like post spawn or even actively spawning, or those big girls that are hanging around their beds, just that frog just dancing above their bed or their area, or if they're fry guarding, it pisses them off. And so I like that those popping frogs, so you can just really keep them in a small area and just work it super slow, and just try and irritate those fish into coming up and eating it. I think a lot of times this time of year, the bite isn't necessarily a hunger bite, it's usually a territorial bite. And so just keeping it in those high percentage areas, working it slow, letting it sit, twitching it, letting it sit, can be a really good way to get some giant bites. So two of the popping frogs that I like, the Jackall Gavacho has caught me a ton of big ones. It's got that cupped mouth, comes in a lot of cool colors, kind of got this three skirt thing going on, just gives it a little more lifelike action in the water, those tails kind of flaring out. And then the Megabass Big Gabot, it's just a larger frog. I think for some of those bigger females, just the larger presence starts to tick them off a little more compared to a small frog. So sometimes I'll throw that if I'm really looking for a big bite. It displaces some water. If you want to pop it, it gives off a good splash. But most of the time I'm just walking the dog with that thing. Just real short pumps of the rod tip and getting it to dance back and forth. And then lastly, just your standard frog. This is the Snag Proof Bobby's Perfect Frog, designed by Bobby Barrick, the OG frog fisherman, the GOAT in my eyes. Anything that he says related to frog fishing is golden. So he stamped his name on this frog and it gets bit. So this is one of my favorites, comes in some great colors. I like these bluegill patterns this time of year because those bluegill are starting to show up, and the bass definitely don't like them around their areas. So, but we'll talk about color in a little bit. But yeah, that one, it walks the dog really good. It also has a fairly flat belly, so it's good casting up on mats as well. But yeah, it has that pointed nose, so it walks the dog really good. And those are really the three go-tos for me. I have some other ones in my lineup, but on any given day, I'm probably having one of those tied on, and then I might experiment with some other stuff. Next up, colors. So like I said, those bluegill colors, I like to throw those this time of year because they're starting to show up shallow. Those bass get real territorial around their areas, and they don't like bluegill hovering around. So anything with like an orange throat or some chartreuse or yellow in the belly, obviously your dark greens, stuff with purple or teal, all those colors are like hues that you'll see on bluegill. It's super natural, and I feel like those colors get some really like aggressive bites this time of year. It's weird, like depending on the color of frog you throw, I've seen just kind of the way that they hit it is different. So with these like chartreuse or yellow bellied frogs, I get some crazy bites. Like they smack that thing. Some of the white frogs, it seems like they're a little more subtle. I don't know. That might just be me imagining things, but that's kind of what I've noticed through the years. But those bluegill colors, and then obviously you can just go with your white or your black, which is like the three staples in frog fishing: white, black, and then some kind of bluegill, chartreuse, yellow, orange type of color. And really just keep it that simple. You don't need to buy a ton of colors. And then really the only other thing besides the frogs themselves would be your rod and reel setup. For frog fishing, it's real technique specific. You'll probably want a dedicated frog rod. I'm running a 7.3 heavy, so you definitely want something with some backbone, some meat, because you're going to be fishing around heavy cover, you're going to be throwing braid, and so you just want to stick those fish and just grind them in, boat flip them, no messing around. So I like that 7.3 heavy. The shorter rod allows me to walk the dog and not be smacking my kayak or smacking the water. But I know some people do like a longer frog rod. I might experiment with that in the future, but for now that 7.3 is great, especially in the kayak. And that's what I like. In terms of the reel for frogs, you're not doing much with the reel. You're not reeling the bait in, so really you're just using it to pick up slack, and then you're using it to reel it in for your next cast. So use as fast of a reel as you can get. I run at 8.5 to 1 Curado DC, and so I'm just able to, once I'm done working my bait, it's out of the strike zone, just reel it in as fast as I can, get to the next target, and that works great for me. And then last component is the line. Frogs, strictly braid, do not throw anything else, do not throw mono, do not throw fluorocarbon at all, ever. It's a no-no. So all braid. I'm throwing a 65-pound braid. I use the Fins Infinity braided line, also recommended by Bobby Barrick. It's pitch black, doesn't fade. I've had the same line on for like 2 years. It's still pitch black, literally no fade at all, and it's strong as shit. So I would recommend that line. It's a little thicker than some other braids, so casting distance can be limited, but for this application, like I said, I'm making target casts, a lot of short roll casts, and so I don't need a ton of casting distance. But I'll link some other braids in the description also, just in case you want something more with smaller diameter. And that's really it. I mean, frog fishing is very simple. You're just looking for the heavy cover where the big girls live, and you want to go in there with a heavy rod, heavy line, and a fast reel, and you're good to go. It doesn't need to be complicated. Anyone can do it, beginners, intermediate and advanced anglers, and you'll definitely catch some big fish. So that bite is going to start to pick up here really soon. Obviously, going into the summer, the hotter the water gets, that frog just becomes one of the major players. But start picking it up now before a lot of guys are throwing it, just because those fish haven't seen it. So anytime they haven't seen it since probably early fall, that those first few frog fish, they're going to hit it very hard, and it's going to be a lot of big ones. So don't be afraid to pick up the topwater this time of year and get to work. Video number 5 will be coming next week. Kind of had a week off last week. I was fishing the one bass up at Clear Lake. That footage will be coming out soon, but yeah, stay tuned for video number 5 to wrapping up the spring bait series. And as always, I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.